Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Workshop for March 7th, 2022. Let's all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first we have the High Desert Conservation Board, Mr. Temple and Ms. Conley. Good afternoon, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. It's been a long time since we've addressed the board. And we're here more just as a, just to let you know and reacquaint you with who we are and what we do. Thank you. And the benefits we provide the citizens of this county. So this is just a little flyer that kind of illuminates what we do. And so, a quick introduction. We fall into this perception that people don't know what the High Desert Conservation District is and what we do. So there's a lot of unknowns. We need to fix that because conservation districts were started back in the Dust Bowl. And all counties in Colorado, actually all of the West, have conservation districts. And this is set up to stop the Dust Bowl, to conserve water and soil. We are actually not part of the federal government. We're kind of a private setup run through the state of Colorado. And so,
Mr. Temple, can I have you pull that mic to you so that the other people can actually hear you that may be
I
watching?
usually speak pretty loudly, so I'll get that. Buttons on, all right.
Can you hear it?
Have you got me now?
We do.
Better.
Great, all right. I won't talk so loudly.
Well, it's more for the YouTube
Got it.
people. They can't hear you if you're not coming through, so I appreciate it.
Perfect. So historically, all counties have conservation districts, and we've become experts at deploying all of the different tools and modern techniques of preventing water and soil movement, or preserving water and conserving soil. And it's even more important now that we've come into a lot of drought stress and a lot of climate changes. So we promote the best practices of soil conservation, both for MVI users and the full service district. So we cover the whole county. And what's interesting in this county is there are actually two conservation districts. There's Mancos Conservation District that deals with the Mancos watershed, and then the High Desert Conservation District that services the basically the Dolores River drainage, absent the Dolores County. Anyway, we've been struggling in the past with finances because we are not really a government-run agency. We do have an office in the NRCS building, and that is basically they give us an office space free. So some people think, oh, that's the government, but we're really not. We do have a couple of good employees, both the salinity tech and our new district tech that helps with educating homeowners on water conservation, better water management, no-till drill, etc. And so we are kind of separate, but we haven't merged with Mancos. We have two separate districts, but we are starting to share positions. NEVA is now part-time with the High Desert Conservation and half-time with Mancos. So we're starting to coordinate, and that is being pretty synergistic as far as our use of resources, and providing some better, what should I say, programs for the public. We've got some really good things going on. One is a nozzle exchange program that we get government grants to help farmers improve their irrigation systems. So with this nozzle exchange, we can exchange nozzles on a side roll and improve water efficiency by 15-20%. And we're starting to show some really great water saving numbers. So that's just one little part of our program. We have a no-till drill, which is a way to rejuvenate a pasture or a new field without having to plow and have a lot of soil and water loss through conventional tillage. And then we've actually just last year bought a manure spreader, which maybe it doesn't sound like a big deal, but there are a lot of people who need to reapply these organics back onto their land, and buying a big spreader is, you know, you use it once a year. So we thought that was a great community need, so there's that. We do this master land steward program that has been really beneficial. People love it after they've taken our course. It's kind of like the Master Gardeners program, but for farmers. And so we get great results. And of course, these last couple of years, you can't see that because of COVID, and we haven't been able to do it. But we're back on track having a good program this year. And we're starting off this program with Ray Archuleta, who is like the guy about soil conservation and organic matter and soil health. So we're bringing him in. He's in high demand everywhere, but one of our board members was able to get him signed up, and so we're kicking that up. So really the point of our being here today is to let the county know that we're here. This is what we do. We're cooperating really well with the extension office, and I got to thank you for getting a new extension agent. That is, oh man. And so if we have all these little disparate groups like extension and now conservation district, and we can do so much more for education and modernizing our agricultural economy, which is the foundation of this whole county. I mean, we can't deny it. We've got to do that. And we're doing a really good job here, but people don't know who we are and why we're doing this stuff. So what I'd like to do is be able to have kind of a quarterly update with you guys, just to let you know, here's our new program, and this is our success, and this is, so it was an introduction is what we wanted today.
Okay. I actually have a couple of questions for you because so you're advertising, you're marketing, how are you getting out to people? Because if they don't know that you're here, we're not reaching what we could be reaching to display the programs that you actually have that are available.
This is a big discussion every board meeting. Once a month, we talk about, okay, how do we get our name out? How do we get the word out? How do we get this to happen? How do we include more of the county? We'd love to get down into Toyoak and figure some of that out and get participation. And I don't know, how do we do it? Would you tell me how we can make this happen? Because we're just a volunteer group of, you know, there's JohnDeere and Adam Kackstetler and myself and Susan Thomas, and we're short a couple board members, and it's hard to recruit anybody to be on a board anymore. It's a lot of work, and you don't get any money for it.
Right.
So this is a labor of love, right?
Mr. Temple, at 2:30 on Thursday, this Thursday the 10th, the city of Cortez is holding a meeting with the other municipal managers and the water boards, myself, the noxious weed department, the landfill, and the tribe regarding messaging around water conservation. So I'd like to just go ahead and extend that invitation to you as well. And I'll follow up with Neva on the place, but I know it is this Thursday. Yes, sir.
Okay, I would change my calendar around to be part of that.
Okay.
I mean, we have to, this county needs all the help it can get. We need to get all the players involved and all have a concerted effort on what do we do to conserve our water and continue to keep us
Yeah.
not being such a poor county.
That's 2:30 Thursday, and
2:30.
Vicky's going to be participating on that to start getting messaging out on behalf of all the agencies. So
Okay.
I'll get back. I'll forward the invitation to Neva, and she can
Great.
get it out.
All right. Well, I don't mean to take a lot of your time.
No, that's
It's
fine.
just-
These are workshops. We actually have time to actually discuss and take the time. We don't have any limitations on them. So that was my first question. And then the next question that I have for you, Commissioner Copenhaver and I were asked while we were back in Washington of some of the hurdles for our county specifically of the Farm Bill. What are the hurdles in there right now as they're getting ready to develop the new Farm Bill? What can we eliminate, remove to where it's basically easier, or we streamline the process through the Farm Bill so that we don't have people that are backed up by bureaucracy within the Farm Bill, I guess. So if you guys would take a look at that also, it's kind of an ask.
Yeah.
What do you see that could be potential problems that are going to be developed, or what do we need to get rid of out of that Farm Bill? Because then it has to get to us, we have to take it to the senators and get it developed in that regards.
I don't know if we have any pull or say in the Farm Bill,
I'm just,
because that's a federal program. However, we can voice our opinion.
you're
We can
voicing your
have-
opinion to us, and then we will take it to the next step.
And we can write letters, we can make our voice known, you bet.
So
And the more
what-
of that you get.
What do you hear from the people that you're dealing with that might be hurdles? And you don't have to answer that now, just
Well,
think about it.
It's a complicated thing, but small agricultural producers have a very hard time getting in contact with the Farm Bill and these federal programs that help bail out. You know, the big producers have resources and people to spend on that. So helping the small farmer, and that's all we have, I think that's critical. And so providing assets for small-scale farmers, and even a big producer out in the full-service district is still a small farmer in the scheme of things. You know, we're not talking about a smaller person who has 35 or 40 acres that still might be able to do something very productive in a horticultural sense, a high-value horticulture crop. We need to be able to help support them as well, because those small properties are just as important, well, as the big ones. I mean, we have to service all, ag
Sure.
people. I mean, I think it's really important.
And I guess that's just the ask, is if you can
Yeah.
find 2 or 3 bullet points that you think are really cumbersome that need to be addressed, then get that to us so that we can take it up to the next step.
Perfect.
All right?
Perfect. Yeah, good.
And, sorry.
No, I can tell by your conversation, you're in touch with the extension office over there.
Yeah,
And have you talked to Mel down at the landfill? He's-
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a great program. I wish you guys continue to move on that as the conservation district and wanting to do soil health and organic matter applications. We wanted to kind of look at going forward with some sort of a composting operation, but the best place to do it is there at the county landfill.
Right.
And so any support you can help with getting them water and bulk materials to turn it into organic matter, then it's got to be the most efficient resource that we can do for organic matter.
Right, I mean, we've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
plenty of nitrogen-based stuff, and protein is still a problem.
Well, we got carbon? We have plenty of carbon stock. It's getting the nitrogen stock, which we need the space to compost. We're currently landfilling about 18 tons per week. Mel, along with our consultants at Weaver Engineers, has submitted a plan to transform the old Carver field, 7 acres of it, into a new upgraded composting field. And I had a meeting with Mel this morning, and it turns out that CDPHE is promising to have that plan reviewed by the end of the year. I would like it to be by spring so we could build the stinking pad this year, but whoever you have at CCI that can put pressure on CDPHE, that'd be great.
That's one of the best county programs I've heard of in a while, to, actually do a composting program and reduce landfill waste and provide a great resource of carbon, and organics. That's, we would have to stretch ourselves so much to be able to even comprehend that kind of a program. But with the landfill, it just seems like a natural. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to have seen that.
It's working out very well. We just need to get more of it.
Right.
Commissioner Copenhaver?
Don't have anything. If you can bring something back as far as anything, suggestions as far as that farm bill would, because they're just working on the new one now.
Yeah.
So if we can get some stuff put into it, we need to do it now.
Okay. All right, and we have someone, Mike Nolan from the MACUS board. He's pretty in tune with all the legislative materials going forward, so we'll get High Desert and MACUS together and get some comments out to you.
Yeah. Our collaboration with MACUS is now a great thing. I always worried about, why do we have 2 conservation districts in this one county? Since it's a small county. But it's the difference between the MACUS drainage and wanting to be in charge of and control of resources there. So I get that, but now we're coming back together to share resources, NEVA, and combined advertising for our Master Land Steward program and all these different things we do. We're going to be so much more efficient so that we can really help deliver goods or the services of soil and water conservation. So, and they're the biggest items on the agenda right now, really, in our drought years. And so we're poised to be part of it. And after our new restructuring and getting good new people on board, we're stepping up. We're letting you guys know this is what we're doing and we're going to move forward. So you guys need to know that we're there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole point of today.
Do you have any specifics on Ray Archuleta's presentation?
Yes.
Yes, we do. So JohnDeere has been working with Ray Archuleta. He's coming into town on May 20th.
Neva, could you use the mic so we get your reverb as well?
All right. So Ray Archuleta will be here May 20th. And he'll be doing a part-time presentation, and then he'll be out doing some soil health demonstrations out in the field. So it's like a presentation / workshop. And we'll be getting the word out to as many people as we can for this, to bring people in.
Oh, we're going to have a packed house with Ray.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
a big draw. We're just,
My wife has seen him on YouTube.
Yeah, yes. Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
and JohnDeere has been, one of our board members, has been really instrumental in pushing him. And so we've got a small, but really good corn. We need a couple more to really flush ourselves out. But that's, so, anybody who wants to be involved in water and soil conservation and wants to donate some time to a board, you can send that person our way.
Right.
And that's another thing we've got to do.
So what do you have, 7 typically on your board?
7 is our number, we're down to
5 right now?
And what qualifications do you want in somebody?
Upright breathing.
We want to have a good briefing, show up once a month, but more than that, we want to have a diverse group of people that represent all aspects of agriculture. We really would love to get a Mountain Ute member involved. Joe Lanier does a great job of kind of giving us a year of the full service district in Del Creek. I think we have a couple good members that do more of a small scale homeowner, I shouldn't say homeowner, small scale. I'm kind of in the middle of the road with a specialty horticulture thing with my nursery and hay production. I think we could also look at even in-town urban environments, because those are soils that are being either appropriately or inappropriately overwatered or undermanaged or too many chemicals put on them. There's a lot of conservation districts really deal with urban environments. We don't have a big urban environment in Cortez, so I'm not really think that so much, but the more participation with full-time farmers, even younger startup kids who want to get into agriculture, that's a huge item we've got to continue to push. How do we get young people into agriculture? So,
And even new homeowners or even older homeowners with lawns, you know, how do they open those soils up, you know, and how do they amend those soils with their lawn on top of?
and it's the water.
Yeah,
Half of the water that Cortez cleans goes to grass.
yes.
Not the grass is bad. But how do we reduce our water use? Or you could reduce water use by 20% in an urban landscape, and that's quite a bit of water. And that's treated water. That's not just
Right.
ag water. And so we should look at water conservation everywhere we can.
Would it be appropriate for us to volunteer either one of our composters or free out-of-fight managers?
We're looking for collaboration. We want to build a bigger community that could really address this.
Yeah, we're also working with CSU Extension, Emily Lockhart, to put on a composting workshop. So we'll probably be contacting your landfill person.
Yeah.
To maybe
Do you
give
have
a
his contact
presentation.
information?
No. I don't.
Okay. It's Mel Jarman, and the phone number down there is 565-9858.
I can go in.
Oh, it's on YouTube. I should give his cell.
Okay, well, I thank you. I don't know if you have to wait quarterly, maybe bi-monthly to begin with,
Whatever your pleasure is.
because, you know, workshops are easy to fit people in on.
Right.
And that way we have, it's more of an open discussion. We don't make decisions this day, but it's more of an open discussion forum, just like what we're doing right now.
I'd love to continue to participate with this.
So,
You bet.
we'll just have Shaq reach out to you, Neva, or you, and we'll just try and do it bi-monthly until we get the, you know, the farming season really going.
And then people,
You
you know,
can-
we're all the board, we're all volunteers. You know, we serve when we can.
Mhm.
Everybody's so amazingly dedicated, we just, you know, carve out lots of time to do this. Because it's important stuff, right?
Do you have a website people can go to get information?
We do, yeah, it should be on that flyer.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've been, you know, using social media and trying, you know, posting flyers everywhere, and we're gonna have a whole series of workshops with CSU, and so hopefully that will get more of the high desert name, and not just the name, but the purpose and how we can help private landowners, so. Yeah.
HighDesertConservation.org.
Yep.
High Desert Conservation Districts.
District?
.org. Districts. plural.
Conservation.org is what I see.
Yeah, all I see is HighDesertConservation.org.
Take a look at your screen.
That's what it says right here, see?
That's what I'm looking at
That's
too.
what I'm looking at.
I bet if you type that in, you're gonna get to it,
Yeah.
one or the other. Okay,
Okay, thanks, guys, for your
thank
time.
you.
Thanks for coming
You
in.
know,
Appreciate it.
we want to continue to just, make this a better place for everybody, and I just look at it being too small of a county, and if we don't all kind of put all of our little groups together, we're not going to be able to do a good, do what we need to do. So,
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Okay, up next we have Rob Englehart. Come on down and we'll talk about some leases.
Good afternoon.
How's it going?
Good. So I wanted to visit with you a little bit about our lease program for our road graders, our blades that we got into in 2014. A little history on that. We started out in 2014 with the idea of updating our older equipment that was outdated and needing some help with the modernization of the equipment. So we were approached by Honan Equipment out of Durango to get into a leasing program where we could get started out with 2 blades in 2014, and we could get in there and go 2 new blades by trading in 2 old blades as part of our equity to build equity. And the reason this program works so well is because they offered a guaranteed buyback. It wasn't just a whim or a wish down the road 2 years later on what we could get with returning them. So basically, we purchased the machines at a government purchase price, and then we get a guaranteed buyback for that same machine 2 years later, and then we roll over. So over the next 6 years, we actually cleaned up about 6 blades out of our old fleet. We are now up to 6 blades of newer model blades that roll out every year, every 2 years. Along the way, we actually increased or improved one of the blades with a wing system on it for the Roundup district for the bigger roads out there with more snow. So it's been a good program. It's worked well. And as an example, in 2020, on a 24-month lease, a government purchase price was $295,000 versus about a $346,000 purchase price on the market. Today, this year's quote comes in at $456,000 contractor's price, and we will pay $346,540 for government. So you can see the difference by staying with a government program. And if you lease it and get your buyback, then I can buy those blades back at a reduced price. So the blades that we have this year, the 2020 models, they're available for purchase at $205 a piece, which it's time now to start doing that, because over the last 8 years, we've built up an equity of $360,000 to use to buy back some of these blades. In 2020, we used part of that equity to purchase a wing and some attachments to it and some hydraulic systems for it at a price of about $35,000, I believe it was. So we used part of our equity to do that. In hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have, because then I'd just be telling you today, gentlemen, we're going to buy 2 blades with our equity. But now I need to be able to go into our capital outlay and get $86,000, excuse me, out of that to help buy the second blade. Or we can buy one and continue building equity. But I think at this time, it's time to go ahead, take 2 of the blades of 2020 purchase, they're low hours, around 700 hours now, and purchase these things outright and put them back into our permanent fleet. The reason this works is because we do not go into debt with this. We might lose our blades in a catastrophic event, a nuclear disaster or something like that, or a pandemic, if you want to call it that, where Kinder Morgan don't feed us any more tax money and we can't afford the blades anymore, but we would just give them back. We would never be in debt. So that's one of the strong points of this agreement.
And we'd still have the blades we purchased.
We'd still have the blades we purchased. So it's time to build back. This county road department had 13 blades, and we want to maintain 12 to 13 blades at all times. We don't use all 13 blades all year long, but we will use all 13 blades in a good winter, quite a bit of the time. These blades are also lease blades, which is good. We're not wearing out the ones we own. We're wearing out the ones we lease, and we turn them back every 2 years, and we get new warranties, new maintenance programs, new blades with new tires and new everything. And so it works good. until it's time to start buying them back. And I think now's the time to build that ownership back up to something we can handle. You know, it's one thing to walk away and leave 6 blades at Honan's yard again and leave us short 6. It's another to end up maybe 1 or 2 of them in a catastrophic event. So that was the whole plan in 2014, was to eventually own these blades. Never was to just lease forever. It was to own, purchase, and have them down the road at some point. And the program buys them for us. We don't have to come up with the money to do it. We do it through our leasing. So in other words, our equity is our leasing money that we use to get them later. So this little spreadsheet I brought you showed what happened in 2020. We were buying them government price for $295. We were guaranteed $265 back, and our option was to buy them for $205 if we chose to. The year before that, in 2018, it was a little less than that. Now it's up to $346,000. This world is going nuts here, and so we're going to go up to $346 to buy one on a government. Guaranteed goes up with it a little bit, but the purchase option goes up too. But we will now gain about $61,000 per blade in equity over the next 2 years. So 2 years from now, I should be able to take the equity and buy another blade, because our buyback will be $219, and I'll put in about $240,000, I believe it is, on equity. It's a great program. You just can't hardly say no to it. But this year I need to get $86,000 out of the the capital outlay to be able to purchase the second blade. So tomorrow or next week, I'd like to visit with you in the Tuesday meeting and request that funding, and I need to do it now, because if we don't make this order, we may not get these blades till 23, something like that, sometime next year.
If the commission approves.
Right now, if we
you could
order them now, we
make the
can get them in
decision
fall.
tomorrow.
So,
Yeah, we could actually make that decision tomorrow. So just to kind of go over the capital outlay for the road and bridge, we have 152,000 is what I have on the sheet here, Rob. So if we take the 86,392 out of there, that's still the remainder of 65,608,
right.
which will be left in that capital outlay.
Is that enough to get you through the rest of the year?
Yeah, because we're in pretty good shape. The capital outlay, we just use to purchase equipment, so this is our purchase this year. We'll just focus on blades, and it gives us that money that Jim just talked about to, auction comes up for a good truck or a bed or something that we really need, well, then we'll still have some working capital there.
And I think last year we only, we were looking at a couple of little snow plows or the truck sander.
Well, and we had to
Snowplow.
rebuild a shop also.
Right, so there's always that kind of little stuff that comes up, but it still leaves you 65,000 out of that capital outlay from what we have budgeted of the 152,000 on a road and bridge.
And the truth is we did reduce that budget quite a bit this year to go work on roads. And generally, we carry over 250,000 or 300 even on capital outlay. But over the years, since 2014, we've improved a lot of the equipment, trucks, backhoes, skid steers, blades, and we're pretty healthy now. We bought an excavator last year, a mini X to do mowing.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're doing pretty good, and I think this year is a good year, equipment-wise, to step out and say, let's spend some of this early now, and let's get these blades bought so we can get them ordered. And so we'll only be bringing 4 in on lease this year, which gives us a difference of 36,000. We were going to pay 138,000 for 6 blades, and now we're going to pay 174 for 36 on a lease. We're only spending 36,000 more for the 4, which comes out of the capital. So it's a little bit different. In 2 years, we should be back on track to make enough equity and hold that same payment, biannual payment, and do it again. So, at least for one.
Shaq, I guess, unless you guys have any other questions, we could make it as early as tomorrow. We could just put that into unfinished business.
Sure.
Because I don't think we have anything addressed on our agenda for tomorrow.
Can do.
So that could actually go on to that.
It'd be nice if Jack could just approach it and save me bothering you tomorrow when you're busy.
Yeah, you don't,
Yeah, okay.
I don't see that you need to be in here 2 days in a row. We're talking about the same thing. We can ask any questions that we have right now, so.
You answered mine.
Okay, well, I know I'm in a hurry because I get nervous and I move fast, but it is a good program. And it is time to buy the 2 blades. One of them set up with a wing, we'll keep it. The other one's out of Mancus, and it's a lower hour blade. that we keep over there. So we started out with 6 or 2, and then we realized quickly that 4 was better, and then 6 was about where we wanted to stop. Dolores County is in on it, and they went a little further than I would have, but it's been a success for those guys too. If you wanted to talk to their commissioners out there about the lease program. So I think it's been a very popular program for all the government agencies out there, so.
How many hours a year are you putting on one of these blades?
Well, the business blade is the Cortez, and it'll get about, we're allowed 2,000 in every 2-year period, so we're allowed 1,000 a year, and we'll push 2,000 on that blade in a 2-year period. The lowest I've seen is about 1,200 in 2 years, and that would be the Mancus blade. That would be the one that gets used the least over there. But it's a complete game changer when you look at the work it does. You know, the little things you don't see anymore is we don't see snow fences going up. We just don't do it anymore. We don't have to. I mean, even on the worst year we had, 3 or 4 years ago, we had that big winter. We just plow right through these drifts now. We just bust them right open, take them off the road. Where before, if we didn't put those snow fences up, then we would be out there with dozers cleaning it up, you know? So just little things like that. And the efficiency of blading a road is 30 to 40% faster. The fact that we can carry these big walking rolls on these blades, pull through that, and compact these roads as we're blading them, saves water because we don't have to use so much trying to get it sloppy wet and then set it again real fast. It's just the little things like that is amazing what this new modern equipment will do. And it's not just John Deere, they're all doing it. Cat, Komatsu, they're all offering this. Giving you this better equipment. But this lease program is seclusive to Honan. This is their baby. This has worked out well, and it's been very popular, so. Anyway.
Questions?
So my question today for Shak tomorrow is the approval to pull 86,392 out of the capital outlay
Capital
to make
outlay.
this thing happen, so I can go and place this order. That would be the real question.
He'd probably be just as happy if I pulled it out of general, but we're not gonna hear.
I keep slipping it in there.
Actually, yeah, we can't do that, so we're not gonna do that. But we can place it under unfinished business. You don't need to come back in here. We already have it, Shak, and we can put that in
And
there.
you said that Wagner doesn't have this program.
Well, they didn't have it when this started, and so it's kind of when you buy into this, and you kind of stay with it. Once the program's in place, you keep rolling. Now, they might today. I don't know. I haven't asked them about it. They did offer, when we bought the 972, it's been about 5 or 6 years ago, they put together one similar to it, and we decided not to use the option to buy it back or trade it back in, because it's been a great loader for us, so we've kept it. But that was about the only time I've done that with Wagner, so. They may very well have one similar to it by now, so.
Okay. Questions?
Any questions on it? Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to answer any more questions about the lease program and how it's worked.
Thank you.
Good, thank you, appreciate it.
I think, Rob, just for, maybe for documentation so that they have it, if you have actually a copy of the lease, just forward it to us so that we actually can,
You guys will have to sign all that before, when we get it all in. I just needed to place the order now, so it don't go well into next year.
right, and I guess what I'm saying is just so that they can actually read it, so they
Oh,
can
yeah.
understand the documentation of it, so they have it, they can file
I'll
it in the
forward that right
record.
along. Yep, good.
All right,
Okay, thanks.
okay.
Thanks,
Thank you, Rob. Okay, next up, gentlemen, Mr. Schwindt and Mr. Carver. Come on down.
Randy, if you want to just grab that other mic, you guys won't have to swap them back and forth. Yeah.
That way we have no fights.
Wireless. Still amazed at wireless, aren't you guys?
You will have to turn it on, though, and then pull it
There
a
you
little
go.
bit closer.
Got it.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Actually, if you guys would take the two mics and
Yeah.
put them together.
Anyway,
don't wanna be a
part of the reason, we really haven't heard from you guys for a while, and we felt that it was time to hear from you. Obviously, you know that we're having conversations with Dolores County, San Miguel County, over the NCA discussion, and we really kind of wanted your input right now, because we're to the point where we really need to make a decision of which way we're going to go, and pros and cons, and we really need some outside advisory information to guide us, or me specifically. I don't know, these guys probably have more water knowledge than I do, but I don't. So, at our last discussion, you know, we kind of asked you guys to think about it and then come back to us to say what are the pros and the cons. At the last meeting that we had with the WCD, there's still some hang up on some language issues. And then some of the issues are being taken out because the delineation between the large and small don't have to be there, but specifically, you know, the unreasonably diminished language is kind of the big hang-up right now of DWCDs, and it's basically in regards to future projects. So whoever wants to go first, give me your 2-minute synopsis of what you think, 3-minute synopsis, whatever you think, but we need to hear from you guys.
And probably the ideas that may have been kicked around on the boards you're sitting on.
Well, I don't sit on a board, but my 2 cents is, I think these guys have worked very hard to protect the water about as good as you can imagine. I know that consensus building is very tough, but it looks to me, and this is just a layman's point of view, it looks to me like the politicians, they need something to hang their hat on. I don't think the water is going to change one bit to have an NCA down there. Matter of fact, it probably enhances the protections. I may be talking out of turn, but we've been kicking this around for so long. I don't want an NCA, but I don't want a wild and scenic either. An NCA to me does nothing but puts a feather in a politician's cap. So I don't think it's going to hurt us to support this NCA. That's my opinion, of course.
So let me ask a few questions with that, because the wild and scenic is still on the table, and then actually so is a monument. With the wild and scenic, it actually makes it, as far as land use, a lot more, well, basically not even cumbersome. It basically takes away everything that potentially could ever exist down there. It's gone, it's off the table. Now we only talk about, I'm going to say approximately 7 miles. Don, you might actually know what the limitation is to Montezuma County there, but we'll say 7 miles. But I guess that's a restriction that I don't want to mess with. And if it doesn't hurt us, as far as protecting the land use, I think it protects it more with an NCA, because everything else then potentially could be on the table as far as the wild and scenic or a monument. So, you know, I know this was walked away from several years ago, but now it's changing. The administration has changed, and there's a lot more potential, I think, that could happen as far as wild and scenic. So, Don, I'll let you.
Interesting question to ask me. I'll do like Randy first, and I'll speak from my personal opinion. As I've watched this unfold and where we are pretty closely, I'm not in Randy's camp. It's just that simple. Water's a big deal. Land's a big deal too. This is one land use bill. It doesn't do stuff for water. It's been kicked around a lot, but it's still not doing anything for water. And so that's, in many ways, at least in my mind, and I actually had a conversation with John Whitney similarly. He and I both felt that our reputation suffered and that we got put on our heads a lot of blame, name calling and blaming for how this come to pass and how it fell apart. he felt that way from wanting to get done, that somehow he got painted into it with a real black hat. I sure felt like I got painted with a real black hat as I led the opposition. Both of us were doing what we thought were right for what we were doing, but language was not adequate, still isn't in my opinion. And so that, my personal opinion is, we can't, got to be awfully careful. We can't support it if we're concerned about ramifications to water. That's my personal opinion. Just like Randy said. I serve on more than one board. Serve on, I think, the two boards that probably have the most to do with it. I'm a board member. You've got a county commissioner that's president of his board. He might be able to speak better for his board than I can for mine. Wish you had your head where I could see more in your eyes, Gerald, but I don't know whether he's willing to. Last I heard from MVI's hat and Gerald's mouth was the shareholders had said no, and they weren't going to go against the shareholder vote. And as far as I know, there's not a shareholder vote that changes that mind. So without putting Gerald on the hot seat any more than that, he's got a way out. I've got to be really careful as a Dolores board member in terms of where we would stand. And so I would, I don't know whether I haven't opened up my packet to see what's on Dolores's agenda Thursday night. It was last month. We had executive session discussion, and I came out of there feeling like there's a place that I would expect you should be hearing from Dolores, but probably today from me is not the right place to be hearing it. And I think Dolores's lead would be of real value to you. I'm hesitant to go beyond that today, just to the nature of your responsibility, my responsibility to my boards.
Well, what is the
Okay, so-
feedback from the Southwest Roundtable?
Well, I think by and large, they would support this NCA. Now, the last two, since I've came on, I've only been to 2 meetings and they were Zoom, and I don't even think it came up in the meetings. Just to clarify, I'm not in one camp or the other, and that's the truth. I really am not.
Good.
I would rather not have either one of the options.
Sure.
All I'm saying is that when you get up to a bureaucratic level, things happen. And it looks to me like the water protection language is pretty good. I mean, and I may be too trusting. The Wild and Scenic, I went to Washington, D.C. and lobbied against Wild and Scenic. And Diane DeGette is still there. It's going to be looming there all the time. So I'm thinking, in my personal opinion, I'm satisfied with the language on the water. I'm not happy with how they push around private landholders like the Suplas. I don't like that at all. But speaking from strictly water sense, the protections are pretty good. They far outweigh anything the Wild and Scenic would offer. And so, if it was my opinion, I would support the NCA. As far as MVI and their shareholders, I don't think that the shareholders understand what's in that, what it means to us. There's the annual meetings that they've had. It takes quite an education to get to understand what's being said in all that. Most people don't know how to talk about water, right? So
I'm sitting here grinning, you've actually getting a debate going in some ways, and maybe that's healthy, maybe it's not.
Well, I'm not really asking for a debate. I'm asking for an opinion. So I'm gonna ask you a question then, Don, because you just said something and I wrote it down. You are still personally not happy with the water language. So
Absolutely. And
the water language, what is the water language
we need,
that you are not happy with?
has to do with conditional storage the need for storage, the need for flexibility in tomorrow's future, given what we have with the water supply that we're looking at today. No, the water language is not adequate. It is not good.
So do you have a recommendation for the water language?
I don't, but I think that's a place, as Dolores has been at the table negotiating for these months, and all of this time, that language has been there, available at that table, and it has not been accepted yet. That's where we are still. And so there's a way to dance this dance that may still work, and we'll see where things fall. But the debate portion of this, it goes specifically to the water language and the dissatisfaction that I had in the earlier version, still have. It's not got fixed in the way it needs to get fixed. That's my personal opinion again. And so it goes to the water language. That's the core of the problem.
So, not that you have to display that right now, but would you have something written that you could share with us as far as the water
I would hope that will
language?
be where we're going.
Because,
So,
I mean, the language is
Yep,
critical. I mean, we
I hear you.
talk about language all the time with our attorney. I mean, that's probably the most critical thing that we deal with.
I hear you, Jim.
And, you know, you can take this for what it's worth, but the people that make the big decisions in the big town up there, they're getting more and more pressure because of Meade being so low and Powell being so low that sometimes our little voice gets lost in the dust.
You surprised me when you went straight to the NCA. Pivoting, if you choose to, depending on how much time you want to give us and how much you want to have a discussion.
We've got a lot of time today.
To get past the NCA is the big boys up in Denver, I mean, and the core of the pressure that they're on and the places you're going. I came to try and take a high altitude look at some of that discussion and have some of those kinds of discussions with using this community where I've learned every bit I know about water as what a wonderful template to tell for what we're having to wrestle with. And this NCA is a kind of a bit player in what we're wrestling with here in terms of our community's future. But it's that larger picture. This is a template for what the state's wrestling with, absolutely, and what the whole Colorado River Basin's wrestling with, absolutely. And so the storage vessels and where we are on all of those issues and what the lessons that I've been able to learn in my water here in this basin with our Dolores River use, living in the McElmo Basin, those are the things that I came to try and frame appropriately that helps us figure out a way to still defend our needs, just like the state has to defend its needs for the larger states community separate from the whole Colorado River Basin, going up that ladder and down in terms of that civics lesson of what we've got a responsibility to do and the parallels, where what we do here is parallel to every other problem that every water user in this river basin is facing. So that's the place that I came prepared to do some discussion with you about
Well, then let's start.
and share and go, but
We'll put it back into your playing field, and you start wherever you want to start with your,
it's such a big topic. So it's got to be high altitude and to some degree. And so it needs to remain a dialogue where we Q&A and get us there. But I've already started with what would have been my intro if you hadn't hit us with the NCA.
well, and the only reason I'm asking, Don, is we're getting hit all the time with it. These conversations are still happening. We're getting hit with it. So that's kind of at the forefront of our thoughts right now. It's like, hey, we need to
NCA
make a
is-
decision.
That's a perfect leap,
Yeah.
a segue into where we need to go, Jim.
Okay.
And so all of these other conversations, because we've got to remember, you three, us two, and the two guys that sat up here before, we're all volunteers. That's how this system works. We aren't the real experts. But we have the real responsibility in our different roles of making decisions. Even Randy on the round table, and that nebulous, I mean, that's a weird organization, but it is influential. And if the water user's voice through Randy isn't loudly heard and influential, that is an organization that can come behind our back and crater us. It's the nature of the system. And so we've all got to bring our voice to these discussions, recognizing that we're dealing at the top end, we've got federal law, and also at the top end, we've got Colorado law. And they're quite different animals, but they both are absolutely critical to who we are. And as you work your way down through all of the different deciding boards to us and you guys and our deciding, MVI and DWCD in large part are the real water deciders in this community in terms of boards, authorities for the big quantities of water. And I don't mean to belittle Mancus and what's over there, because that's similar over there for their water and that, but that's something that you guys have to be real aware. Same with McKelway user. Yeah, but the Dolores and what we're doing, that's the real example. And so as you get down there, then you get to some contracts. We're right now having some discussions, DWCD with MVIC, and we had that discussion at a meeting in the last month, and I was on Zoom, but Gerald pulled something out of a contract that he thought was really important, and it took me a while to figure out which contract it was, but in my home where I was, I had my file of contracts. It's a file folder that's that deep. And every word in that is contractual language, that the complicated contracts that govern the Dolores project. And I found the paragraph or the two or the page that he was talking about in the contract he was talking about there, and we had to hone in on that and go elsewhere. But it's a good thing I know all of those contracts pretty well, and I don't know all of them really well, but the most important ones I do know really well. And you got to get down to those contractual levels to really make decisions. And then beyond them are the stack of DPR stuff for the Dolores project. And that's a stack of books that's that high. I've got every one of them on my shelf too. Those are the government documents, they were NEPA documents that drove how the Dolores project came to be, and the contract language in there, and knowing what's there. But in between that complexity, it's those of us that don't know all of that stuff, every bit of it, none of us can. We have to make some real major decisions on what's the right thing to do. And that where I began to get much better at articulating this was when MVI asked me and Bob Bragg to teach education outreach, both to McKelmo users and to the MVI board, about all of this stuff in Colorado. I mean, in this community. And Bob and I put together what could have been a graduate level course if you'd had longer to do it all over a winter that began to shape all of this in my mind in a better way to articulate it. But that's where this is coming from. You got your federal stuff that's doing it, and you got your Constitution. If there's a federal Constitution and there's a state Constitution. Okay, Colorado water rights are governed here under the state Constitution and what it does. And that's really important to know. Prior appropriation in Colorado, all of your western states are prior appropriation, but each one's really quite different. Colorado had the same guy that basically shaped Colorado's prior appropriation system to interpret where it came out of our state's constitution, and he did it in a manner that's way different from what Wyoming did. The same man went to Wyoming and helped do theirs, and it didn't get designed in Wyoming with near the complexity that we have here, where we use our water court system and a whole lot more through all three branches of government and more. In Colorado, where up there, they put it in the state engineer's office. So it's the guy that gets hired by the governor and his regulatory agency that drives Wyoming's prior appropriation system. So having said that, devil's in the detail as you work down in every state. Okay. Federal stuff, we don't have to reach to the Constitution so much, but we do. But the Colorado Compact is a beast of the federal Constitution. and the Colorado Compact, and reclamation is a federal institution. And really, reclamation came into being, and then the Compact came into being because you had to have the federal government to build storage stuff, big storage. You had to have them. And literally, Powell and Meade, in order to get Meade built, long before you got Powell, that's what drove fundamentally where Colorado went with its Colorado in-state law that built Conservancy, the Southwestern Conservation District Act, the Conservation Act and the Conservancy District Act. That was all driven in order to get, because to go past when Meade got built, to be the flood control and whatever it did in the lower basin, in order to have projects up here in the upper basin, when you had the control that you did in the lower basin to develop upper basin stuff. So Conservancy District Act was for northern Trans Mountain diversion based on prior appropriation. First in time, first in right, go grab it, take it from where it is, put it where you want to use it. But it took storage and a bunch of money and some tunnels and whatever to do that. So that's a junior right in Colorado. And so storage is often done with federal dollars, and storage are junior rights. McPhee was built with federal storage as a federal right, as a piece tied all to the compacts, but a federal contract, and that stack of complicated contracts are all tying the feds and the state together to run this project. But it's the storage rights that are the junior, up and down the basin, in this state, in our basin, and the direct flow rights are the senior. And most of your direct flow rights are senior to the compact. MBIs are as senior as they come. So I'm running over a ton of stuff in a hurry, a ton of meat. But to have your direct flow rights, you've got an appropriation date and an adjudication date. And so maybe I need to slow down, but maybe you want to have some questions. I'll pause for a minute here.
I've got one question. So you said that the devils are in the detail. Well, the way I understand it, if this is developed through an NCA, that the details are then established within a 2 to 3 year period of time after the fact. Is that correct? Because everything that I've heard, the devil, the details of everything else, other than that language of how it wants to be directed, has to be there, but then the details are established within a 3 year period of time.
Well, the management plan would get adopted, and that would have a lot of the details in it. But
Correct.
certainly, the NCA is sort of, if you think about it, it's the walls of the house.
It's the template,
and then
right.
when you start to get into the interior stuff, that's the
And how
management
everything
plan.
works within it would be the management plan or the details.
We also know when you start the wall, a 1/4 inch off on one side, by the time you get to the other side, you're in trouble.
But it also has to do with the details. If it's a federal place, they got a whole bunch of different tools in their toolbox to impact what happens to the detail of the water supply and its use that was there, that the foundation was built on. And so an easier way to maybe answer the question that maybe you're digging at, but maybe not, but the one that's important to me is Sam Main's taught me a lot about water law in the state of Colorado, and with junior rights, but if they're big junior rights and come late and with a lot of money behind them, they can become the tail that wags the dog over the senior rights. And so that the federal rights bring that tail that wags the dog with their junior rights in terms of the tools in their toolbox to even the senior rights. Because you're imposing two apples to orange systems on top of each other. So that's where it gets complicated, intricate, and a whole lot of problems, but you still have to boil it down to some of the simple things as you make decisions on. And part of the tail that wags the dog in my mind, I'm going to go back even to our federal constitution. It's the state's federal constitution. Prior appropriations is in the state's constitution. But in the state's constitution, it's still the water itself belongs to the state. And it's a use, you help me with the word, usufructory right? Did I get that close enough?
Yep, you're on.
It's a use right, and you only have the right to what you use, no matter what's written on the piece of the paper. And the definition of what you use may change a little over time, and has and does, and has limitations on it. And it becomes, it changes from time to time of use and a lot of other things where there's a lot of detail that describes what that right is. But in the state's constitution with that usufructory right, the water still belonged to the state. And if you didn't use it, it went to the next junior user. And so if there's ways to get you to a non-use situation, one way or another, then the junior right that wags the tail that wags the dog may have even more power. And that's where then money begins to be a big driver, and then the apples to oranges stuff begin to have ramifications. And all of this kind of relates back to the language in the NCA issue. And so it becomes politics, and it becomes how do you design a system that keeps from ruffling a lot of feathers and maybe allows you to move forward. Switching back directly into the NCA, since you took me back there, Jim, the flexibility that I think we need in tomorrow's future is a dangerous thing in many ways. The ag guys own all the senior rights and a whole chunk of rights, but they got the least dollars in their pockets. And the guys that want to pick their pockets, pardon my language, but it's still in terms of general uses, the cities have a ton of money and the enviros have a ton of money. And they'd love to do away with prior appropriation. They'd love to come back later and change and make things happen differently. But there's still a lot of political power that we have with our rights and a lot of support for keeping us alive and well. And we've just got to learn to dance the dance right and keep things comfortable enough where when Ken Curtis's words that I've started to quote, and he's then started to quote them back out loud in the same kinds of places. If you're coming after my water and I got a junior right and it's a junior ag right and you need to put it in PAL, there's nothing to put it. You can't get blood from a turnip. If we got no junior right here, we can't move any of that down to PAL to help you anyway. I mean, and that's just good common sense. And as we have that good common sense argument, even on the NCA, and the water problems potentially with it, why do we need to go there today? And I've had my attorney, our attorneys, different ones, so I won't name anyone or which boardroom I'm in, caution me about, yeah, you want flexibility in the future, but you know who's gonna, the guy with all the money, those other players are the ones that'll take your flexibility away and hurt you the worst. So you got to be really careful. But I don't think we've got a choice as we make our political arguments to make them loud and strong with good common sense and what's fair. How do we keep our community alive? How do you not just dry us and turn us into like the mining town ghost towns?
So what's the answer to that question?
Still keep working within the system. That's why it's so important, the roundtable process, and have that ag voice override the enviros that have their paid NGO guys sitting at all the table, running the round table, instead of the volunteer ag guys that have a hard time getting there to do the job. So that you can temper, because we got a lot of political support, even within those individuals sitting around the round table. But in our communities, nobody wants to dry up our towns or dry up our ag or dry up what we do. They know that we need to feed them. So it's messaging. So just here again, since I came with kind of an outline and some things to throw at, who I think that does about as good a messaging for an ag perspective as anybody is Family Farm Alliance. And that we just and I didn't go to here again to their meeting last week or the third week in February, whenever it was. But there's a Colorado work group, and Ken and I are both on it, and we've been working on this policy for close to a year. And we hope to have had it out 4 months ago, ready to sell, but it got voiced to some high-level people by the Alliance. And I'll want to put this in your inbox now that I have something that I'm sure I'm comfortable with the blessing to do it. Ken and I actually shared it with the Dolores Board verbally a month ago, because we knew it was coming out. But that's something that I think is worth reading. That helps you, it's talking point kind of stuff, but it's that they're advocating for at the federal arena more than any place, for an ag message, just to keep us all alive. Cities, control your growth a little. Enviros, you gotta be put to the same test of your water use as every other water user, instead of just getting every drop you can. And there's a whole bunch of environmental use of water in California is flushing out under the Golden Gate, driven by an Endangered Species Act. What could be more wasteful? The Alliance is somebody that can help make that voice and help us all. And if we pattern our voices after that, it's good talking points where we can protect our community's water too. And we need to build that message together. So I'm working as hard as I can, everywhere I can, at Southwestern, at Dolores, on Colorado Water Congress Board, and Family Farm Line. So I'm on all 4 of those boards right now. It's about more than Jody's gonna let me keep doing. I've got to pull back from somewhere. I don't know where first, but here I'm just still streaming like my mother did when she got older. I blame her for me getting more that way instead of more concise. But I'll circle back to Southwestern, because you asked about the round table on the NCA. Where's Southwestern? Southwestern will follow, they'll have to follow the different board members' diversity that'll weigh in with where they are. But the water people on Southwestern have really similar concerns to what Dolores has and that I have, and will be helpful there as well. They won't be as strong as Dolores can be, whatever, but they'll want to hear words just like you do, with more specificity where they'll go. And but I know that's been an interesting conversation there, and it's a pretty good split of terrible different camps in terms of really wanting to do the right protection. So they'll have to dance the political dance more closely than Dolores. But I'm hoping that Dolores will come out pretty strong. We'll see. But still with a path that sure doesn't ever want to burn any bridge with our senator right now. We need to reach to both of our senators and everywhere else we can in the feds for some federal dollars to help us get through the time we're in today and next year. I mean, and we need our act together, figuring out how to bring some of those dollars to help wrestle with our users that have really suffered from the water shortage last year for sure.
And how are we going to get those?
There's a money floating up there that's not pinned down, that's appropriated and ready to get out the door by the bureaucracies, that's not pinned down to the degree a lot of appropriated dollars are, if we could message right. And so the Alliance is going to help us. We've got to put our package together locally first to even know how to get what ask we want. And that's where we could like to fight with each other as much as anybody, instead of work together to develop a package with some diverse users. So we've all got to be sitting around the table developing that package. I've had a sketch out in my mind that's evolved some for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's evolved during those 3 or 4 years, but I've been asking for us to get our community ask and message together. We're still not there, but I'm hopeful that we're going to get there before the end of this calendar year with some significant ask.
So I have another question then. What if the ship sails and we still can't get it together? That's my fear right now, and I'll be real honest with you. My concern is this has been going on for so long. With the current administration, the ship can sail, and it could be a wild and scenic. And the reason I say that is because that was a question that was asked in Washington a few weeks ago while we were sitting in there talking to the senators.
Which ship?
Now,
Which
the
ship is sailing?
the ship of a wild and scenic.
So
The ship of a monument.
You shifted from the ship of the wild and scenic.
No, I shifted.
From where I was, the ship of the federal dollars that are available
Correct.
for a different
So-
place.
So the federal dollars are there, they're floating around in your words, they're floating around, which floating around doesn't mean how do you capture those? I don't know, that's probably not a fair question for anybody to try and answer because I sure don't have an answer for that. But I guess what I'm saying is
That's in the infrastructure bill, is exactly what I'm talking about.
Correct.
Where the dollars are floating around, Jim. And
But
it's
we
a
still
quite
have to
separate
capture
fact from the
those.
Wild and scenic.
Right.
So, okay.
So all of those which we're preparing, we're working with our grant writers, trying to get as aggressive as we possibly can to capture whatever we can. However, we're still fishing, because we still have to be successful, and we have to get them in. I mean, there's a lot of things on our part that we're working on to make sure that we even get the line into the pond. However, so let me go back to, so that's talking about the dollars, but what if this current administration wants to just make a decision tomorrow and say, well, you guys have been talking about this for, I don't know, 5 years, I don't know what it is, but,
And to
and
me,
they just say, we're not gonna do it, you guys are never gonna come to an agreement, there's too much infighting, we're gonna make a decision, like you said earlier, the gal,
To get,
to get,
yeah.
is still there. That ship wants to sail in a different direction. So I guess, at what point in time do we,
What point do they say, we've had enough of you guys fighting, arguing, discussing, whatever,
And
and this is
the
what's gonna
ship's
happen?
going down the road?
If this were a week from today, I might have a different answer for you with a real specificity. Maybe I shouldn't have prefaced with those words. But I think we've got to figure out where we land on the NCA. And in my mind, if it's not ready to pass, we can say it's not ready to pass. And the stronger with the more specificity that we say, that give that answer, as opposed to saying not only no, not no, but not yes. That's
So
the
that
place.
leads me back to my very first original question, if we want that type of specificity in there, we should be able to offer that language.
There you go.
And that's what I am not seeing. Every meeting I sit in, it's a constant argument, and attorneys get paid to argue, so they're gonna continue that. No offense, Ian, but seriously, that's what attorneys are paid to do. They argue. So I can sit here for 5 hours and argue and never get to a point. I'm trying to get to a point. For Montezuma County, obviously, we know that we want to protect our water. There is no doubt, and we want to protect our land use. So, my concern after I hear, because we are new, we're just coming to this table after it was kicked out in 2017 or whatever the date was. And my concern with the current administration and the players that are there now, I feel like that ship is ready to sail, and the masts are up, and the sails are getting ready to come down. And that's what I'm saying is, if we don't do anything and we don't offer the language that we want in there so that it can be debated, we're not going to go anywhere. And we have yet to offer the language that I can see at any meeting. It's always, well, we don't like your language, we don't like your language, we don't like your language. But we're not offering anything. So what is it going to take us to offer the language that we want and quit this debating back and forth? The attorneys are going to, they're there to make money. That's my opinion.
I'm here
So-
to make money.
Where is the protection that we need to get this thing completed so that we don't have to have that looming over our heads, that wild and scenic? I guess that's,
I'm grinning at you. You're welcome to come Thursday night to our meeting, but I guarantee you, I will carry your message to the Dolores Board meeting in public and in executive session both, as strongly as I can, and I thank you for giving me that message to carry, Jim.
well, and
So,
I'm speaking for me. I have a board. This is not a decision of one, ever. This is a board decision, so we function as a board. I'm just expressing my frustrations of the meetings that I continually go to, and I can't So the way I deal with contracts, if I don't like the language, I get with my attorney and I say, let's change this language, and I offer it to them. And then if they don't accept it, okay, then we have something to negotiate, or to debate, or to argue. The attorneys don't debate, they argue. And that's all that I am seeing. It's a constant argue, and nothing ever gets offered. I guess that's my frustration. So I will stop. I have somebody on my left and my right I'll let them speak.
I'm dead serious. Thank you. I will carry the message, and I would expect it to do us some real good.
But what my biggest concern, Don, is a lot of years ago, which Gerald was part of too, was out west of town, Canyons of the Ancients. We started off with an NCA proposition, and the fighting started. You know,
Yep.
Don't do this, don't do that. Next thing you know, they got tired of us, and they said, this is gonna be a national monument. Here it is.
No, I was
That's
part
my
of all of that
biggest
too. And it's a fair concern. I will counter, which factors into my personal opinion, is Washington's pretty broke right now. There's a lot bigger fish to fry than maybe this one in that mine, if we do the dance right.
Well,
And so,
And it's
we'll see where it
And
takes
from
us.
my humble opinion, I don't have the expertise to give anybody a number, but the hang-up clause is unreasonably diminished. Somebody needs to put a number in acre feet on that. And I'm not the one to give that number.
Well, I think there's a couple things. Gerald, if you want to jump in.
I tell you, that part of that and where that came from was the fact that in order to get rid of all the outstanding remarkable values for the wild and scenic, that was what the enviros wanted, the language they wanted in there to protect what was there now. Okay? They were gonna let the outstanding remarkable values from the wild and scenic go away, and the wild and scenic period go away. But in order to protect what was there now, they wanted that language in there.
Well,
In order to
the
get rid of this.
definitions portion of it, they need to define what unreasonably diminished is.
It is defined.
Not in that not in that document, it isn't. There's some bills since that use it and put a number to it, but it's not defined in that document.
And my understanding is that the unreasonably diminished language hasn't been defined in the context of an NCA by a court.
Gotcha.
And so there still is some wiggle room as to how it might come out. I mean, we've got some case precedent that talks about it, but it's not defined specifically in the context of an NCA or this NCA.
Yeah.
And so, one of the difficult things is you've got the fish downstream. And so when you start to factor that in and how that's going to affect how that unreasonably diminished language is interpreted by a court, I think that's where the lack of clarity is at this point. I think the other big hang-up that I've come to understand is that there's not specific language in the NCA that's protecting presently existing rights. And so presently existing and specifically that Plateau Creek right. That's been something that's been discussed at the meetings, and I think that that's another place where at least there's been dialogue and debate about whether we want to put specific language in there that protects the presently existing rights, specifically spells it out. Now, it's debatable. Some people say that as it's written now, that's going to be protected, but I mean, there's nothing in there that explicitly says this is protected.
I keep going back to a question centered on Plateau Creek. I think DWCD has had plans for certain storage rights, and those aren't protected, is that correct?
Well, the plateau is one of the conditional
One of
rights.
the conditions.
Absolutely, and it's one of the ones we're very concerned about.
So,
I mean, you did a good job of explaining
yeah.
it.
So what makes me override my concerns and to support the NCA is that I believe that the community, the water community, can help themselves by being proactive on how they utilize their water rights through efficiency measures, infrastructure improvements, all of those things. I've always thought that the MVI user, if MVI could improve its system, you would have more water to your head gate while diverting less water. And the diversion of less water is not so much a concern to me as it is, I want more water to the head gates for more acres. And I think we can do that. So that's why I'm saying, support the NCA, because the other part of that puzzle is we have got to support investment in our infrastructure. All of these problems are going to go away by the improvement of our infrastructure. DWCD sitting at 92% efficiency, right? MVI is not, or better. MVI is not anywhere close to that. So I think fighting with the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. is not a waste of time, because I believe Don has some legitimate concerns. What I believe is that we have better time spent educating how we can invest in our community, both Mancus, MVI, the full-service farmers, the Utes, all of that. And then when you factor in the other concern for the McPhee Reservoir being specifically designated as a, what is it? And part of it is an environmental concern. Isn't that correct?
In a roundabout way, but.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is written into the contracts.
It's not in the contracts, but it's the NEPA documents that
Yeah,
makes that there.
something like that.
Yeah, that's how it happens.
So, yeah. So anyway, that's why I say, in my opinion, we can do much better with our energies somewhere else. That's my opinion.
And Randy and I mean, and our community needs to have more debate and discussion about this very issue, because it's truly that. Here's where I want to be a little bit cautious. How many guys are watching us on YouTube right now?
11.
Don't know.
And
It could-
but this is where you get into some pretty interesting stuff about the complexity of the apples to oranges of federal law and state law, and how they can work with and against each other, and do some little in one place and then a little on the other, and so that where Randy's end result of what he wants to do for the community is the same as mine. But I have different concerns than he does, based on those intricacies of knowing where things are going to go, and the water that we're talking about, because it's water that's protected under the federal contract, but not under state law, and the driver's seat. And I mean, both of those places are ticklish places for, depending on which players are sitting at the table when you're doing some hard-ass negotiating. Pardon my language.
No, you're fine. I don't have to apologize to anything. Not to us.
No.
Well, usually my mother taught me not to use that word in
you're-
public too much.
You don't need to apologize to us.
I live up to her expectations quite often.
Okay. Well, that's, I think I said everything I needed to say. I'll let you gentlemen, if you have anything you want to add or subtract.
No, not right now.
Thank you guys for coming in. I appreciate it. You know, I guess my concern wasn't as high as it was until we came back from Washington and I heard that discussed in a room and it was asked specifically.
On the
And I'm like,
NCA.
well, the wild and scenic, not even in NCA.
I was there when that,
It was-
and did that.
It was wild and scenic, and I'm like, however, he did a good job of dancing around the question, and, I mean, in my opinion, he didn't really even address it, so. But it doesn't mean that still is out there. That still is being looked at, it's still being thought of. So I felt that it was important that we hadn't heard from you guys in a while, and we needed to hear from you, and
There was a just for you, your information, probably you guys have already heard it, probably you, because of Farmers Alliance. In Utah, they're so concerned about water, they're gonna spend $250 million on metering their secondary water sources. They've showed they're gonna save 22 to 40% in their water use just by everybody knowing what they're using. So investment, to me, investment is another part of this debate. Somebody's gonna have to start investing in some infrastructure.
so the dollars in the IIJA is what you're talking about.
That's
Is
the
that
acronym for the infrastructure bill?
Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, yeah, the
Yeah.
IIJA.
Yeah.
I imagine that's what it's all about, but that caught my attention.
Yeah.
That's no little amount of money.
And if we can find the right stuff to tailor our ask to, that fits what our needs are and what we can agree our needs are in this community, it's the kind of thing that can be, it's an opportunity that we don't want to miss. It's a shame we weren't more ready with our ask today. But I think we could, we need to be really serious this summer. I mean, from now, this calendar year, to get as quickly as we can a package put together.
Well, you guys are back in 3 weeks.
Don't start out with a hard question.
I really do see the two boards that have a lot to talk to each other about on this very issue are MBI and DWC.
Sure, and I
And
agree. We're just caught in the middle of are we on board? I mean, obviously, we want to protect our water and we want to protect our land. We have two things that we're looking at, and we have to look at what's the best for Montezuma County. We obviously know that we want to protect it for our ag users and for everything else. But we also have extraction that could possibly at some time, it hasn't in my lifetime down our 7 miles of area, but, there is a potential there, which,
we haven't we haven't not made any accomplishments in recent years. Totten left control of DWCD that didn't have a specific plan for it, and is now owned by MBIC again, and they have a plan. And that's a vital component of the flexibility we may need as a community to keep as much of the county together and whole as we can. That in a place that we weren't there 10 years ago, the last time, and as we finished the last NCA discussion. So as we slowly and more under the radar screen, we can do this to actually get some solutions done.
I guess,
and implemented and in place.
I guess my
We're making
point
headway.
is that it's not under the radar anymore.
We're not in some ways,
Yeah.
but we can still be in a bullseye bigger than we are, and we need to be careful about how we do that with
Yeah.
everything we do, which is where it's really important to build as cohesive a community as we can.
Okay.
I can almost guarantee you, if we don't do something before this administration goes out,
They will.
they will.
And we've got several years for that to happen.
Yeah, we do. We probably do have a couple of years,
I
but
don't know about that, because we're coming up an election this year, and
It'll change.
Yeah, but-
somewhat.
yeah, but the-
somebody probably wants a
Potentially.
feather for their hat, like you said.
the thing they will do is going to be done by the president. So it's something that could happen in the next 3 years, or until this term's over.
Yep.
Well, we just all have to use all our best thoughts and political powers that we got and see where we go.
Anyway, those are just my concerns. If we're not happy with the language, then let's present some language. Let's be proactive and let's go. Let's quit this.
Back and forth.
Sorry, I have to always apologize to our attorney, but
That's all right.
these guys get paid to argue and they're getting paid big bucks to argue, and just keeps racking up the bills, and I would just like to see something that's actually offered that makes sense, and I haven't seen it yet. So, thank you guys again, appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know where we're at. We'll see you in a couple
Thanks
weeks,
for your faith in us.
Let us know. how
2 to
you
3 weeks.
They have faith in us?
Well, they wouldn't have put us here to have this seat if they didn't have it at some point, Randy.
I'm gonna have to go study even more now.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
We're gonna take a 5-minute short break because I have to get a cup of coffee. And
Okay, you're
Good
live.
afternoon. All right,
All right. Okay,
tell me what it is that you're looking at, if you would. Oh, we're gonna do that first? Sure, we can do that first.
Oh, I was just getting it ready.
Oh, good.
Doesn't matter to me.
sure, let's do that first. Is that something that's easy?
Sure, let's do that first. Last week, well, the last couple of weeks, I was contacted and actually spoke with a lot of Ute Mountain Ute Tribal Council members and Pete Otego, as well as Chief Carroll with the BIA and Toya. In regards to, they're having a tremendous amount of problem trying to actually recruit and retain their BIA officers down there. They've got several that are in the academies now. Where they really have a problem that I can't do anything to help them with is in the White Mesa area in Utah.
Utah.
And so they've been trying to work with the sheriff in San Juan County, Utah, with that. And, you know, they're in the same, they have the same MOU that I do with BIA. If they call for assistance, we'll always be down there. And our MOU with BIA and the Ute Mountain Ute Casino contract are separate. Okay. None of those funds that they pay for anything outside of the casino. Okay. The only thing that it does is when the casino has special events and whatnot, and we provide assistance with boosting their security down there, working not only with their security but with the BIA officers as well. So what this has come about in the tribal council meeting, it was a lot of discussion was around whether or not the tribe would allow for other law enforcement agencies members to receive the special law enforcement commissions through BIA to enforce the tribal and federal laws in Indian country. I've been through this before with BIA. The thing is, though, is that I've always held back with them, and I explained that to Chairman Hart and the council members. They know where I stood for the last 7 years, is that we're here to assist. But the thing is that, number one, we're not going to come in and start enforcing your tribal laws. Just not going to happen. Number one, I don't think that your tribal members are going to appreciate that, because there's a separation there. There's a sovereign nation. We all understand that. Each one of our sheriff's deputies understand where we lie within what our jurisdiction authority is at, and having jurisdiction over non-native and non-tribal members in Indian country, but not native or tribal members that the tribe accepts as members of the tribe, whether they're from someplace else or not. And so the only way to tell with that is you have to contact BIA to find out if they are on the tribal member list. And where this really comes into play is the 3 sections on County Road G that fall within the Ute Mountain Ute Indian Reservation in Indian country. And so that's where we've always had that good working relationship with that. The thing is, though, is that I explained to them that they may want us to go through this, the tribal council. However, their tribal members may not. That's where they're going to receive a lot of the complaints, okay? But it doesn't change anything that we're doing right now anyway. But the one thing that I did explain to them that in order for this to go any further, I asked for a meeting with the tribal council so that they understood from me personally what it is that I can offer and what I'm not going to do. And I do not want to have any confrontations with the jurisdictional boundaries, but this will actually protect our sheriff's deputies a whole lot better when we're called down there to assist and things go sideways, okay? Even though the MOU, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, says that that would suffice as far as any legalities. However, when you're talking about today and the use of force, I want to make sure that the deck is stacked for us, okay, and that we're protected. So one of the big things that I do like about this resolution is that there has to be a training program put on by you tribal members as far as their culture and what is acceptable and what isn't. That has to happen first before we go through any training with BIA, the Department of Interior. That's the first thing. And I'll tell you that is what I appreciate, and they did too, that we need to know. And we have to have those classes put on by no one else other than their tribal members. And so that's what's going to be in the works within the next, or within this year sometime. And just so you'll see what that is about. But this is really a historic thing. It's never happened before, okay, a resolution like this. So it's not just geared toward the Montezuma County Sheriff's Office, it's also directed toward the Colorado State Patrol, and of course San Juan County, Utah Sheriff's Office as well. So it does open the door and allows for that training. What I really like is the cultural training that has to come first, and not the other way around. Okay, that's what that's about.
So are you asking that we just review it, have Ian review it and sign it, or is that
There's
something
nothing
that's?
to sign.
So
I
it's
just wanted to bring this to your attention.
Gotcha.
That this
It's
isn't anything other than, it
just a-
definitely is a historical document now. It's never happened before, but I'll tell you, I'm really impressed and have been with the tribal council members and their willingness to help us and work with us so that we can help them. We have a lot of other crimes that affect our citizens in Montezuma County that occur down there, other than what's in the casino, okay? We have a travel center, and there's a whole long list of crimes that occur within that travel center in Indian country. If we can have some type of an effect on that, it will help reduce the crimes that we're having to incorporate here off the reservation in the county. So, there you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Now then, next thing, I wanted to, before I forget, I've received several calls from people that live around County Road T and 145, around the Ironwood. They wanted to know what is the status or update on what's going on there.
Ian?
And I said,
Well-
I don't know, I'll ask.
So at this point, the commission has withdrawn the high impact and special use
Right.
permit, so Ironwood can't operate anymore. I've been in contact with CDPHE,
Okay.
with their hazardous waste division. They have come down and done a site visit at Ironwood, and they have taken pictures and I guess assembled documentation, and now it's up at the state level getting reviewed. So they're gonna get back to us, hopefully in short order, with some sort of an idea of what the state may be able to do for us, specifically maybe from a legal standpoint. Other than that, we continue to remain in communication with Ironwood and limited communication, and that's kind of where it's at.
I remain vigilant to this, to say the least. However, have you, Shak or Ian, have you been contacted by Bradley Moore?
Tony Moore?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And
have
so-
heard from an individual.
Yeah, and I want to be a little bit careful with this because
Exactly. I just want to
ultimately,
know if
what
you reach out
Ironwood,
Like I asked him to.
yeah, I mean, what Ironwood's doing with private individuals to help mitigate that problem is really Ironwood's business.
Right, exactly.
And we're hopeful that Ironwood can take it upon themselves to get their situation cleaned up.
In regards to anything he presented, I would say that in addition to whatever state license or permits he would need, I would also ask that he not do anything without yours, Jim Spratlin, and Mike Zion's approval.
Well, I'm not doing anything with it.
Exactly.
Okay, but the thing is that he's talked about utilizing the State Division of Fire. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so I want to be a little careful with this
Yeah.
too, because it's not on the agenda for today.
Okay, that's
So,
not.
yep.
There's no decisions to be made here. I'm just wanted to know.
I think we've all had those emails. I mean, they want to know what's happening today and what are we going to do tomorrow? Well, there is still a legal process that we have to go through. That is still a private piece of property and we can't just,
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It's a concern. It's a high concern of ours. And like Ian said, we've reached out to CDPHE and now we're trying to move it as quickly as we possibly can to get,
Yeah.
the answers that we can so that we can actually give them to the people.
Okay. Good enough.
And I know that's not what they want to hear, but that's actually the reality of it.
I don't know. I'm just looking at it, wanting to know, just like everybody. All right. What is it you would like me to put together for you for next Tuesday?
So one of the things, well, I'll start unless one of you guys want to start. Go ahead. So one of the things that we're looking at as far as if we do a public safety sales tax, obviously like Montrose did, they put 0.70 or 0.75% of that tax that went straight to the sheriff's office. So with that, we want to be real specific of what are we spending it for. So when we went out to the jail, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that we were looking at, and it was brought to our attention, is that we're understaffed out there as far as we have very limited resources that are there at the jail all the time to manage the population. So that's one, is what additional staffing do you need that's going to make that run efficiently and effectively? Two, and you may not be able to do this, but I can probably help you with this, is what is it going to take to put the other pod on there? Because you said, I think, Kent, it's designed for 3 or 4 more pods?
Four pods total on there.
4 pods total?
Yeah.
So,
2 at each end.
not that we need 4, but what can we get by with?
Yeah.
Yeah, what is it costing us? And then with that, obviously, we know there's additional costs that go along with that, and what are the deputies needed to make that? So that's kind of the component for you as the sheriff, is we want to be able to answer the questions of what is that, what are those dollars being spent for, and here's the reason why.
Sure.
Because we don't want it just to be an arbitrary guess. We want to be able to say, here's what it's going to take. And if our capacity is still running at, well, the other day it was not at 100%, but prior to COVID, it was running, we were at 100%
Plus.
pretty frequently.
Okay.
So, have I left anything out?
I think one thing that we had discussed along that as well is what numbers do you need to have adequate patrol, and what do you need to do to give your drug task force what they really need to get the job done?
So pretty much an overview of what you need so that we can project. So does the 0.7, 0.75, does it cover it? Does it need to be more? Can it be less? That's kind of where we're at, because we have
Well, if you tell me what a number is, then I can give you the percentage.
Yeah, I mean, we're really looking at where we need to set this tax to cover costs.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, so I can put this together and make sure that
Well, all of us can sit down and put all this together
And-
so that you'll
and-
have figures. Okay?
We're, I don't know if we're real early, but we probably should be going sooner than later because of the time that the
Right.
language has to be out for the ballot, and we want it to be specific.
Well, and you all would have to pass a resolution that we'd have to have a draft resolution, send it to the Department of Revenue, have them give their comments back before you could even pass the resolution.
Yeah.
How many more inmates in one pod? How big were,
Safely. I think that the size that we have, anywhere from 10 to 15 is usually safe.
Is that
depending on
pre
the
or
class.
post-pandemic?
Well, right now, it's all going to be post-pandemic, so our numbers are increasing. But it's not going through the roof yet, which is good. However, I mean, just today, going through other bills and whatnot, our medical costs for our inmates are just really going up through the roof. It's really nuts.
Well, I think the other thing that we need to be focused on, and we're all seeing it right now, our food costs are gonna go up. Just,
They are.
I think we need to review that too, because I don't think that your $75 a day is
No.
covering it right now. I think we're deficient there,
Uh-huh.
and before
Yes.
we let the other municipalities know, we need to have a number for them to say, hey, by the way, January 1st of 2023, these are gonna go up.
If not
Because
sooner.
or if not sooner, because we are,
Just in fuel costs for your patrol.
Oh, yes,
we're gonna be taking a big
Pushing.
hit here.
up over 4.5 a gallon. Yeah. You'll have a cost analysis is what we're putting together that I'll be able to give you on next Tuesday as well. So you'll see and compare that to the previous years of what that was.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be on Tuesday, if it could be on Monday, that way we have more time to present it, discuss it, go over it, I mean, whatever.
Okay.
It can be on a Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, we can do that in a Monday workshop.
Yeah.
But when I
I
sent
hate
out
to-
the,
Doing that on Monday.
when I sent out the draft agenda, since next week is Public Safety Week, and we don't have any public hearings, I told all the
Okay.
public safety people to be prepared to discuss it.
Okay.
So if you could have those numbers ready by Tuesday,
Well, I'm just,
Monday or Tuesday?
yes.
yeah,
We'll have a special meeting
Yeah,
Saturday
really
if
good,
you're.
Jack. Thanks a lot. All right, I'll put together for Monday, just in case. So, all right? Okay,
that's
so,
kind of what my thought is of what we're looking at, and commissioners, if you guys have anything else that we need to add, or that we've forgotten.
Additional staffing for the extra pod.
yep, that has to go along with it.
Mhm.
And that's what percentage of sales tax?
Well, right now, we've talked about a 1.9%, but we don't know,
Yeah,
We don't know what proportion to allocate for just your office.
we need to know, we need to have some
Okay.
We
numbers so
need
that
to
we
know
can
what you
actually.
need so we
Yeah.
can figure out
Yeah.
the apportion.
yeah, you'll have some numbers and stuff. Just for your own information, went through the selection process for our non-certified deputies within the agency that had the years of time already vetted in the agency that would want to be sponsored and sent to the Law Enforcement Academy to become certified. And what that does is that actually gives an additional 3 years upon completion that they will stay with with the sheriff's office. So I got to tell you that we have a plan going clear into 2024 now and sponsoring these deputies to get certified. And those are the people, and I'm telling you, there's 10 of them, they're going to stay. They're here to make a career at this sheriff's office, and they want to stay here because that's been my job, is to create these future leaders for that sheriff's office. And I'll tell you what, we've come leaps and bounds, and it is really inspiring to see these young people jump up and do the hard work that they've done to get there through the leadership training, just to be able to go. And I'll tell you, it really does my heart good to see that happen. I think we're set for future use, and it's just getting better all the time. So with the work that you guys have done for us last year, plus everything else that we're doing with these opportunities and programs, the morale really couldn't be any higher. And if we keep this up, we'll quit being a training ground for other agencies. Okay, that's the thing. We want to keep them. We need them. Our tax dollars are already vetted in them. Let's just continue the investment. Okay.
Good.
Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Shak.
All right, so
Which book do we want to look at?
we're going to,
Shak, do we want to just do a little bit more discussion on the sales tax before we jump into this?
Sure.
You saw the email that I sent out.
Yep, I've got it right here.
And I think those are really some of the questions that we need to answer as we put together this resolution. And I think getting budget numbers from the different public safety organizations is really going to be the next step. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for me after reviewing that. I don't know what more I can do. I mean, I think that gives us a jumping off point. That gives us a ballot question that we can at least start with, and then we just got to kind of fill in how specific we want to be, and then what kind of a percentage tax we want. And I think the budget numbers are really the thing we've got to look at to be able to put some of that together.
So.
And then I guess the sunset clause is the last thing we've got to figure out.
Yep. So I think your 3 questions that you asked, and there's more than one question each one of them, but, so number 1, I think we just took the first step to get information from the sheriff
Yep.
on those specifics there. We already have a presentation for fire protection, so we have that. We haven't discussed anything with the DA because that's part of that, that would be included in that.
Well,
That portion of that also.
and so I think that what you guys have to understand with this public safety sales tax, revenue comes in, and you can specifically designate by resolution where the revenue is going to go. So you can say 40% is going to go to the Montezuma County Sheriff, 10% is going to go to the Cortez Fire Protection District, et cetera, et cetera.
So,
Or you
okay.
can delegate it each year
Each year.
and say, this is how we're going to delegate this out. You don't have to delegate it to this entity or this entity or this entity.
Okay.
I mean, you guys get to make that decision. And so, again, you can make certain specific dedications, and then you can leave, a certain percentage just in your general pot that you can then delegate out each year for special improvements. So, I mean, say, for instance, just hypothetically, you give 60% to the sheriff and 20% to fire protection district, and then you've got 20% left over. Well, then you can give that out to X, Y, and Z on a yearly basis. I mean, you can, it's really
Right, okay,
flexible. So it's,
I get what you're saying, but, so the language that would include who it can only go to, right? So law
Yep.
enforcement, so basically nothing but public safety.
Yeah, so statutorily, it can go nothing to nothing but public safety. By resolution, you can move that in.
Gotcha.
And
Split the percentages
Yep,
differently
exactly.
each year.
So like when Montrose did it, for instance, their resolution said they were going to specifically give 70% to the Montrose
Sheriff.
Sheriff's Office. That's something that they did. And so, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you guys want to draft this resolution, and then that's going to influence how the budget question is going to be crafted. And so, certainly the advantage of specificity is the voters know exactly where the money's going to be going. The advantage of flexibility is it gives you guys obviously more flexibility to delegate on a need basis. So
My initial thought on that is our voters don't tend to approve a lot of flexibility. They want to know where that money's going to be spent if they're going to give it to you. And that's fair of them to ask.
and I think certainly then figuring out the percent's going to be huge. You can levy up to 2%, but that doesn't mean you have to.
Correct. And I think that's what we want to try and get it as close as we can, like you said, to, we don't want to overtax anybody.
Yep.
But
And then I
we
guess,
want to be able to cover the needs.
I guess then the other question would just be, the sunset. I know Commissioner Copenhaver talked about that last time, and so that's another thing that if that's something that you guys want, we're going to have to write it into this resolution before we move it forward. And so in this initial draft that I sent out, I did not put in a sunset clause, but we can do that, just so you understand. And then so, as we move forward through the process, just continue to give me direction, and I can tweak it to suit the needs
I
that we
think that
want.
after our discussion last week, I think we were all pretty much on board, and I'm not speaking for you, Kent, but I think that we were on board to go ahead and add that sunset.
And I think what we could do, I think we could sunset
Portion of it?
a portion of it.
Okay.
The
like,
capital projects portion.
yeah, like to me, the project of putting that pot on there is something that money's gonna go away when that's paid off.
Is it
I mean,
possible
is
to
that-
sunset a portion of it?
Well-
Not the whole thing?
I think, I don't know that you could necessarily sunset a portion of it, but you may be able to, and I'll have to do a little more research, but I would think you could probably set, say, like a 1.3% sales tax for the first 5 years, and then take it down to a 0.7% sales tax after that moving forward. So, in essence, you'd be sunsetting
Okay.
a portion of it, but, I don't know that you can specifically sunset for the jail, for instance, but you could certainly calculate that into your math. I'll do a little bit more research, but I'm fairly certain we could set it up that way.
How much are we paying health insurance on every employee every month?
It's about $800 a month. It comes out to $11,000 per employee per year.
Yeah, just a little over 800, I think. But the other thing that we're fighting with that right now is that we're losing even just to our local agencies right here.
Those who pay
because
dependent care.
We don't have dependent care. So one of the conversations that we had with the insurance committee, what are they called?
Benefits committee.
Benefits, I'm
Benefits
sorry.
committee.
Benefits committee, that was one of the tiers that they were saying, can you do this 15% this year, 15% until we get up to where we can actually have some benefit coverage. Because we're losing employees because we don't,
Offer
we're
dependent
not
care.
offering any benefit coverage. So here again, and I'm going off.
The
of-
arrow's going the
I'm
wrong
going off
direction.
of a
We got
memory.
one going up and one going down.
But you could almost double that number that we're paying right now.
And we're looking at a minimum next year of an 8% increase. Again,
So it becomes
So,
it was a pretty big number.
so to me, when I was here before, we could see this thing coming.
Yeah.
That this health insurance was a trade wreck, because they have to take everybody we hire, no matter what.
Yeah.
So your premiums are gonna be way up here. That's why that's one of the reasons we were trying to set that money back, so that this county could become self-insured.
we're partially self-insured
Yeah.
now.
Well, or at least partially to some degree, but you could, to me, we could even say, if we could do it with this tax, part of this we could use to become that
Would that
eventually.
be in,
Well, so I think that's where it's gonna get tricky. If you wanna do the public safety sales tax, that has to be used for public safety specifically. Now, if
So-
you wanna do a general sales tax, you could use that money for exactly what Commissioner Copenhaver's talking about.
But we're still gonna have to be very specific.
The
in what
other-
we're asking for.
And the other,
I don't know, I'm just asking questions.
No,
because
that's
Yeah, no,
I know it's not an
that's-
easy thing.
that's why we're here.
exactly,
You know, back then, it was about $400 and some a month, and we thought it was terrible. And now it's $800 and some a month, 9 years later.
Yeah, we're spending, 2.6 million a year on insurance, and it could be, like Chairman Candelaria said, it could be easily double that if we start taking on dependents. And at some point, it's cheaper to just hire your own physician.
yeah.
I mean, I think,
The thing that I think you could do, and I realize it's high, and a lot of people are, I mean, we floated this idea around because if we could have become self-insured, and we actually put in for a grant deal that they were doing one of these block grants, and they had like $25 million in this block grant. And you could do we lost out of it, trying to get it, and they actually okayed some infrastructure overpass type of deals with that money. But if you could ever get it in place and actually, here's your insurance coverage for the year and it's $1,000 deductible. Now, we're not paying everything, but here's your $1,000 to pay that first part. I'm giving it to you to pay your first $1,000. If you want to spend it on it, if you don't want to spend it on it, you don't get to, we don't pay anything else until you go past that $1,000. I guarantee you what, most of the people are going to keep that $1,000. And they're not going to run to the doctor every time they turn around, unless they have to have it.
Oh, and on the other side of that, though, we have had some massive.
Oh, I
claims.
know,
So,
I know.
That's
But
what
you
we-
can also have,
so I think.
I guess I'm gonna bring it
guess-
back.
I don't,
to
I'm
do
just throwing this out
Let me-
there. It's just a
And let
discussion.
me just bring it back a little bit to the public safety tax, because I think, I certainly understand the point you're making, Commissioner. I think it's a worthwhile point. I mean, certainly on the benefits side, there's some things that we can think about in terms of getting money there. But, I mean, ultimately, with this public safety tax, if we are able to get this passed, and for instance, we are able to pay the dispatch center fee, which, check, what was that, 300,000?
yes.
346,000.
Yeah,
Well, that's money that now we've got paid through the public safety tax.
Correct.
So then we
use that
can
money
use that money in other places to do some other things.
But I think what I was getting at is, this is a conversation we could have, is if there is money that we can do, this is a project we want to work toward.
Yeah,
Outside of this,
yep.
Correct, and that would work
I
within
mean-
the general fund.
I don't know,
Figure out some way to get
I
our
can only
healthcare
see
costs
this
under
thing
control.
getting worse and worse, just like what Shaq's talking about. It's 8% the next year, just keeps going and going and going.
And those are conversations in my mind that have to occur with spending within the general fund. And so, and so I think there's a couple things to consider. I mean, if you guys want to do a public safety tax, then that money has to be used for public safety. But that doesn't mean it doesn't free up money
In the
in the general
fund.
fund.
Right.
But that, you know what, the first question out of their mouth's gonna be, what are you gonna do with the money out of that general fund that you're still gonna
Yep.
get from the property tax? What are you gonna do with it?
Well, that's a good
And so,
point. So I see
to
what
me,
you're saying is, we're gonna
We've got to
pay-
know what we're gonna do.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if we
pay-
have a plan,
Absolutely.
people will be more, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there. We got to have a plan for what we're gonna do with the money out of the general fund that we were putting to the sheriff.
Yep. And I think that's certainly part of the discussion.
I don't know. And there may
I
be
agree.
better things than this
Well,
self-insurance thing. I'm willing to listen to anything.
the insurance is.
But I think anything we can do to help in the future cut some of this off
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think my job as the attorney is to tell you guys, I mean, again, there's a couple different options. I mean, if you want to just have the conversation in the realm of the general fund, you can go for just a flat, regular sales tax. And then that money would come into the general fund, or you can go for this public safety tax, and then that's going to be specifically for public safety. I mean, those are your options.
So I guess to answer Ian's question, that's what we have to decide first between the three of us. We have those two in order, and then do we want the sunset? So I'll speak first as far as the sunset. I think it's a good idea, and I think the 20 years is good, and that at any time, we can then decrease it. That doesn't, I don't think we're limited to decreasing anything, are we?
Well,
Or we just leave it at that
Quite frankly,
sunset?
Ian, I'm shocked.
so when you say sunset in 20 years, are you talking, for example, impose a 1.5% tax and then sunset the whole thing after 20 years? Or are we going to talk about?
A percentage, I think is what?
Can you even sunset just a percentage?
I think you can probably reduce the percentage after a period of time.
Yeah.
I mean, so you could, for instance, start out with a 1.5, and then, whether you want to sunset it in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, I mean, that's something that, you would sunset it. So you'd say 1.5% tax for the first 10 years down to a 0.75% tax after that.
I think one of the things that we need to consider is with the drug task force and what's coming into this community, they don't have enough people to really fight or combat
They've got two.
what we need to have. So I think I don't want to sunset it too early until they actually have somebody or enough
But if
personnel.
you can sunset a portion, like the fire department's hitting us up with the cost of their fleet, and we're talking about the cost of a jail. As soon as those are paid for, you could take that part.
But
back to the
we could do like Ian said, we could set it in
Tier it.
10 years to decrease from 1.75 to 1.5, or
Sure.
whatever we think that part is that we need to pay on the pod and
The fire trucks.
the actual,
Well, the increasing cost too, our fleet costs are gonna go up. And although I think we're being smart with the way we're leasing them now, because we're gonna rotate them in whatever that mileage was, 100 or whatever thousand.
I mean, we're gonna need a loan just to put fuel in them.
Wow. So I think to answer your question, I think I am on board with the sunset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's,
So-
so then that's easy enough. Then we just need to figure out the numbers. And that's kind of the next step, hearing from these agencies what they're going to need. And I think that when we get the cost of the jail, and the cost of, I mean, certainly we can factor in the fleet and we can factor in some of those other things. But I mean, the fleet's going to be a reoccurring cost ultimately. It
It's
seems like
gonna
the
be.
jail is going to be the big capital improvement in the here and now. And then possibly, just from what we heard from Chief Balfour, it sounds like they may need some upgrades to a lot of their equipment, their engines and some of that stuff. So, I mean, I think we need to just figure out what the capital projects are in the here and now. Then we can set it with that in mind, and then once those capitals are paid off, then we reduce it down.
But what's the thought with the rest of the county out there, funding just Cortez Fire? I mean, we've got to get
We've got to
gotta go to
include all the
all-
fire districts.
All 5 fire districts, and then they
We
just
can't pick and
allocate it.
choose. Now, there could be some that come in here and say, hey, we don't need it. And then I
Right.
guess, based on what they say, we could exclude them. But that'd make it hard to give it to them 3 years down the road if their
I think you let
situation
them,
changes.
I think you let them have that conversation between themselves, and that's between
I could
themselves.
have the fire chiefs here on Monday.
And then we just need to set, like you said, whatever that number.
Really, what we need is numbers from all these I mean, and whether they come in and present it or whether they get into us in paper form, but I mean, we need numbers that we can plug in so we can set these percentages.
Well, and we may not be able to give them everything that they're asking for.
No,
That's the reality
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
I mean, because we gotta take care of, I mean, the sheriff, the jail,
Well, and we've got
everything
to,
that goes along with it, the DA, once we capture them, we gotta get them put away. I think that's our defense. That's where we need to take care of it.
What about
So,
emergency management?
That falls under
he
public
would
safety
fall
as
under
well. What about community intervention?
so I think the way the statute's written, and I'd have to pull the statute up, but it talks about basically, you can dedicate this to agencies or activities that are involved in public safety. And so community intervention would seemingly fit into that. Because, I mean, really, that's what they're doing. They're doing public safety type work. So that last sentence in the statute does seem to cover that sort of an organization.
so, we're on board with the sunset. We have then established, well, we'll work on establishing the numbers, which will then give us the percentage.
Perfect.
And I think, I'm still hearing that we're more in tune to a public safety.
Oh, yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I think it should be the public safety thing. I think we have to know what we're gonna do with that money we were spending on
Absolutely.
public safety,
Yeah.
or we're gonna be in trouble.
Yep,
Yep.
I agree.
Okay, I'm just trying to cover,
Yep,
Yeah.
I've been through this before. I know
Yep.
what they do.
and I agree.
They're gonna come
That's
at
a
you from all
perfect
angles.
example of, hey, we're gonna take that $345,000, we're gonna pay the dispatch fees, and that money then we're gonna divert, and we're gonna now use it to be able to offer dependent care or dependent coverage for
Yep.
our employees, so that, just like Steve said, we're not losing these people, we're not a training ground, and we're actually keeping them here.
So the way I kind of envision doing this as we move forward, there's a first draft of a resolution that I sent you guys out yesterday. Obviously, to that draft now, I'll add some language for a sunset clause, and then as we move forward and get the numbers, and we can plug that in. We'll just keep this draft working. I'd encourage you guys to look through it. It's got a ballot question on there. I mean, obviously, that's just an initial ballot question. As we move forward, we're certainly going to want to get more specific with that ballot question. But let's just continue to work with that draft resolution and tailor it and fit it and fill in the blanks. I tried to highlight in yellow the areas that we need to kind of fill in, and we'll just go from there.
Okay.
So then we still have to have the discussion. Just because we make a resolution, put something on the ballot, doesn't guarantee that it's going to pass. So we've still got to have the discussion of what we're going to cut if these things don't go through. So I've got a breakdown of everything that's being spent for general government, and then public safety, and then health and welfare, and culture and recreation out of the general fund. And obviously, the spreadsheet doesn't include social services, public health department, landfill, because those are all funded differently. They're not getting, while Road and Bridge is getting a percentage of the mill levy, they have other ways of coping. Landfill's an enterprise fund, and public health and social services is mostly, well, is
Pass-through.
entirely pass-through, except for there's a little bit of a mill levy that goes to social services, and we do have to pay a per diem, or not a per diem, a per capita to the health department based on population. That being said, you can see where we're currently at right now. When we look at all of our revenues, our total revenues are going to be 13.2 million for the year estimated. Keep in mind that 2.5 of that is from the American Rescue Plan money, and so I don't know that you can count on that going forward after this year. Of course, we all hope that, Kinder Morgan starts to bounce back. I think with oil prices, they're probably going to bounce back some, but, we're still not buying locally produced oil. So we've got, let me go back to that revenue screen. Total 13.2 million in revenue, but without that American Rescue Plan money, it's 10.7 million. Our expenditures are 15.9 projected. So if you think Kinder Morgan's going to come back, you've got to make up a difference of a little over 2 million. If you don't want to count on Kinder Morgan coming back, you've got to make up closer to 5. So public safety right now is spending, without the grants that pass through there and the contracts that pass through there, which is all awash, is spending 7.1.
So that covers 2 over what we're spending right now well, let me back up. So I think you said the 1.9 last time we met, we were almost at 9 or 7 million.
For what? Oh, for the what we'd raise in the
1.9
sales tax.
Projection, it's a projection, I understand.
Roughly
it's gonna
7.5.
float.
Roughly
7.5 million, so then it would cover at the current, without adding the pod, without adding staffing, without doing anything else, we basically just cover it.
Well, we could cover all of public safety with that, but then if you did it that way, I'd feel that'd be backhanded. We'd be taking away everything we're funding them with now.
Well, right, we're not gonna do
But
that.
yes, the 7 million is what it takes to run public safety. And 7.5 if you count CIP, so that's correct. So that being said, we've got to begin having discussions, because if this sales tax doesn't pass, and eventually the goal is to spend less than you're taking in, which all of us have to do in our home lives, because on a long enough timeline, if you spend more than you're taking in, you're going to go broke. That's just the way it is. You got to have more coming in than going out. So where do we begin to look for these cuts? And I think we've got to start, before we go to other department heads, we got to start with these 2 departments right here. We got to look at ourselves before we look at anybody else.
Well, and the other thing that we need to look at too is what are, like you just said, public health is being paid by the state. What are the needs, what are the wants, and what are the things that are not funding themselves? So you send me that pie chart.
Of the revenue, yeah.
Do you have it?
I can put it up on the screen real quick. Let me pull it up.
I'll wait till it gets it up, but.
And this can be found on page 9 of our audit as well. But I just clipped that pie chart for a discussion I was having with the chairman. So for our funding right now, we're 24% funded by property taxes, and we're a little over 53% funded by grants. And then we have departments that obviously charge for services, such as the landfill, and then, of course, mineral leasing is a big part of that, and then other miscellaneous revenue sources.
So if we were to lose our grant funding, what'd you say it was, 54%? 53%. Where do we cut 53% of everything we have here at the county? I think that's, I mean, to me, that, when I look at this pie chart.
Well, right now, we're in more danger of being without Kinder Morgan revenue than grants, because for the next couple of years, through the American Rescue Plan, there's a ridiculous amount of grant money coming down.
I understand that, but
However,
can we
you're correct,
backfill-
grants are not forever.
No, you
No.
live by the grants, you die by the grants.
So so I don't want to try to I mean, 24% property taxes, I don't think we try to backfill everything with grants. I think we have to increase, and we're not talking property taxes, increasing property taxes, but the number from a sales tax needs to help offset that. I guess is-
And I think it's fair, I've got this screen up on YouTube right now for people to realize we've done everything we can to bring in revenue from other sources. I think that's fairly evident.
Is Kinder Morgan in the property tax?
They're both in property and minerals.
Okay.
So, just so you guys can see that pie chart that I was looking at earlier with Shaq.
And again, that's page 9 of our audit, it's on the website, anybody can look it up.
Do you have it, Commissioner, do you have one of the hard books of our last audit? Do we have an extra one of those?
I'm
Shaq?
sure we do.
So that you can have it to look at, so you can.
Okay.
I don't have one of those. It's at my house.
Yeah, I can grab one. So, one thing I'm going to throw out on the table, it doesn't have to be palatable, and certainly there doesn't need to be a decision about it right now. But when we start looking at those type of numbers that we have to make up, we're going to be asking everybody to make some significant cuts. And I think it's pretty obvious to say with our drug problem and everything else, we don't want the majority of those cuts to come from this public safety area.
So I guess.
And there's certain things, I would say the clerk and the treasurer's office bring in enough fees to pay for themselves. If you do too many cutbacks in the assessor's office, you're not going to have any money coming in from anything. So you got to be real careful there. So between our two budgets, I'm just going to throw this out there. You don't have to give me a response right now, but one thing that could be cut there is you could cut the administrator position and you could split the responsibilities between the commissioners, and you could make up a chunk of those two budgets by doing that. Now, I'm not saying you should do that, and I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just saying we're talking about making some serious cuts, and you're going to have to look at making some serious cuts.
Well, that, even cutting that doesn't get us anywhere close to what.
No,
what we
but you
need to
got to
be.
make
So
a cut here and a
it
cut
doesn't-
there. And
Yeah.
for those two budgets, that's about what you have to cut.
Okay. Well, I think. We don't have anything on here for capital either, do we, Shaq? That,
Well,
Because that's
everything
gonna
in
increase-
capital is ultimately out of
out
general
of the general
fund.
fund.
But we did a lot of cutting. We don't have capital projects this year. We're not
We don't.
remodeling anything. We're not doing
The only thing we
anything.
left in there was almost basically the fleet,
And some generators.
yeah. I think, but
And
that
that's
was
like 50,000, 30, 50,
50,000?
something like that. So
Wasn't
there's
very
not a
much.
tremendous amount in capital this year. But that's not, I mean, obviously in years in the future, you're going to have to replace these flat roofs because they wear out. You're going to have to replace things that wear out. That's the nature of capital. Let me pull up the our budgets for BOCC and administration. I'll just pull it up on the website because it's a little quicker for me to find it. Those are your revenue sources. So again, the county commissioners, your salaries are set by statute. We don't have any wiggle room there. The fringe benefits, they are what they are. That's a percentage for all employees. You've got a $2,000 operating budget. That's not gonna do much. Professional services, that's what we're using for grant writing, engineering, those types of things. And I think judging by what we get on grants, you'd be foolish to cut that.
Mhm.
And so you do have an option of making some cuts in dues, training, and travel. However, if you don't attend the meetings in Denver and DC, then we lose our voice in Denver and DC.
I think instead of going through this in detail today, I think we all have our budget books. I think we just need to start looking at it and asking the questions of what really do we cut if we're looking at the we'll call it 5 million. Because that's a significant cut.
It's a
That's 30%.
significant cut. And the
I
taxpayers are
don't-
going to ask, and especially the two of you that are campaigning this year, what are you cutting? And in 2016, when they built the courthouse, they asked all the departments to cut 10%, and a lot of them never got that 10% back. So, I mean, they have recently got some pay raises in the last year that helped make up for that.
But
But
even if we asked for 10% again,
That
it wouldn't
doesn't-
cover it.
wouldn't cover it.
That'd only get us a third of the way there. Guess the
Okay.
judge is gonna have to find his own security.
So as far as what we can cut from the assessor, or not the assessor, administration and the commission, really, I mean, they're pretty lean already. The only thing I can see you cutting, and again, I'm not suggesting that you do this or telling you you have to do this, but my position is the one that makes the most sense to get rid of and to, I know there's counties that split those responsibilities amongst the commissioners. And I'm not telling you you have to consider it, but you're gonna have to consider something eventually.
Okay. Any other questions for today, gentlemen? Shaq's just a bearer of bright
I'm your sunshine, just say it.
bright sunshine. Which is something that we know is coming, that we're gonna have to wrestle with pretty quick anyway, so. We'll get you a book, Commissioner Copenhaver, so you can look at that last audit. You know, and something else, Shaq, too, maybe we don't need 3 months in our reserve. Maybe we pull it down to 2 months and utilize, I mean, I don't know, I think that's a discussion.
I think that's a mistake.
Well,
I think you've gotta have a reserve because something like
We do
March
have to have a
2020
reserve.
hits and nobody knows where anything's gonna be funded from. I mean, you could ride out the Kinder Morgan dip by dipping into your reserves, but, I mean, who knows what happens after that.
correct.
But right now, you're correct. The county does have healthy reserves right now.
And we use the ARPA money for this first backfill.
Correct. However, we don't get another ARPA payment after this year. And
No,
Kinder
so-
Morgan's still stating that they're down 25% pre-pandemic, which that will be our next year's taxes, so you're gonna be dipping in again.
No, I know that.
And
Hence, how much more important it is for us to ask for the sales tax.
And I hate to say that we have to ask certain departments to cut and not others, but I don't know how you make cuts in those public safety departments and still expect to have public safety. Which you do have to look at, as government, what is your responsibility to fund? And it's provide for the common defense, provide for commerce, basically health and welfare, and the one thing government does well is infrastructure. And other than that, you do not actually have an obligation to provide anything else.
Okay? Question, comments? Welcome back, Commissioner Copenhaver.
Oh, yeah.
You were talking about this 10 years ago, huh?
Yep.
Previous to my tenure on there,
We honestly didn't think it would happen this soon.
yeah.
I
Wow.
honestly thought, at some point, Kinder Morgan would go away, and that they were paying 50-some% of the taxes back then. You have one large taxpayer to that extent, why
Right.
you're asking for trouble if you don't prepare for the rainy day.
I know.
And we have a healthy reserve because in large part you helped prepare for that rainy day. How much was in reserves when you took over the first time?
$5 million is when we left.
We left
There
in
was 5.
hopeful.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot more than that now.
That's what I'm saying, maybe we should look at that. I mean, I'm talking very short term, but
You're talking very short term. If you're, total right now, altogether countywide, we've got roughly $20 million. But of course, a lot of that's already accounted for,
Bridge,
right?
it's all allocated.
That's
all-
everybody. But if you're out spending your revenue
We can't
by
do that.
3 to 5 million a year,
Can't do it.
you're looking at, 4 to 7 years.
Well, yeah, 4 to 7 years to insolvency.
We can't do it, period.
So, I mean, you can make certain cuts along the way, but, and we're being a little bit doom and gloomy too. I expect there's gonna be a small rebound from Kinder Morgan.
So do I.
And so, that's a little gloom and doomy. However, the reality is, one day there won't be any more CO2.
Which is the reason why the ask. Okay. Okay, gentlemen. Start looking at what you think in each,
If I remember right, when you left, there was 8 million. You guys added 3 to that 5, if I remember right. And I could be wrong.
What's that?
When you left, there was 8 million, I think.
Oh, no, there was more than
Was
that.
there more than that?
Okay, you want me to
They
tell you
spent
too?
$7.5 million